Imagine a deity so powerful that she received the first sacrifice in every temple in ancient Greece, so revered that no religious ceremony could begin without first honoring her, so essential that every Greek home kept its sacred fire burning day and night in her honor. Her name was spoken even before the almighty Zeus. And yet, you've probably never heard of her. Hestia, the goddess of sacred fire and the hearth, was one of the original 12 Olympian gods, the elder sister of Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Demeter, and Hades. But at some point in history, something extraordinary happened. She was replaced in the pantheon by Dionysus, the god of wine and feasts. How did one of Greece's most important deities simply disappear from the record? Why did the Greeks decide to erase a goddess from Olympus? This is the story of the 13th god that time tried to forget, the first to be devoured, the last to be freed. Hestia was the firstborn daughter of the Titans Cronus and Rhea. At birth, she was the first to be swallowed by her father, who feared a prophecy that he would be overthrown by his own children. For years, she remained imprisoned in Cronus's womb, along with her siblings Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. When Zeus finally freed her siblings and won the war against the Titans, Hestia emerged as the last to emerge, technically the eldest and youngest at the same time. As a reward for her unwavering loyalty during the War of the Gods, Zeus granted her an unprecedented honor. Hestia would be the first deity honored in all sacrifices, public or private, throughout Greece. This was not just a formality, it was divine law. No Greek would dare make an offering to the gods without first honoring Hestia. A proverb even developed among the Hellenes: begin with Hestia, meaning that every important task should begin with due reverence, the oath that changed Olympus. Hestia's beauty did not go unnoticed. Apollo, the god of light, and Poseidon, lord of the seas, began to vie for her. Tensions grew on Olympus. Immortal gods, driven by mortal passions, were on the brink of a conflict that could raise the divine abode. Then Hestia did something radical. She placed her hand on Zeus's head and swore eternal virginity, refusing any suitor. It was more than a personal vow. It was a sacrifice to maintain peace among the gods. Zeus himself, king of Olympus, was so impressed by his sister's actions that he bestowed upon her even greater honors. She would receive the central place in every Greek home and the richest portion of mortal offerings. This oath transformed Hestia into the very essence of the hearth, the physical and spiritual heart of every family in ancient Greece. She wasn't just worshipped in the hearth. She was the hearth, the fire that could never go out. In Greek daily life, each household kept a small flame burning permanently in honor of Hestia. Letting this fire go out was seen as a disaster, a sign that the family had abandoned its sacred duties and placed everyone in spiritual danger. This wasn't idle superstition. It was the ritual that structured all of society. When a child was born, it was carried around the hearth in a ceremony welcoming it into the family. When a bride first walked through the door of her new home, she was greeted with offerings thrown into Hestia's fire: nuts, figs, honey. When someone died, the home's hearth was ritually extinguished and then rekindled, symbolizing the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. But Hestia's power extended far beyond private residences. Every Greek city-state possessed a monumental public hearth at the political center of the polis, a perpetual flame that represented the very soul of the community. This sacred fire was supposed to be lit directly by the sun's rays, using polished bronze mirrors to ensure its divine purity. And when the Greeks set out to found new colonies in distant lands, in Sicily, in southern Italy, on the shores of the Black Sea, they carried embers from this mother hearth. It was like transporting a fragment of the very essence of their hometown. Their first action upon arriving in virgin territory, lighting the new public hearth with fire brought from the metropolis. Hestia was, literally, the continuity of Greek civilization through time and space, the goddess who chose invisibility. Here lies the great paradox. Hestia was the most honored goddess in all of Greece, yet the least represented in art. Vasus depicted Zeus with his thunderbolts, Poseidon with his trident, Athena with her spear and shield. But Hestia? She rarely appeared. There were no monumental statues of Hestia. There were no colossal temples dedicated exclusively to her. There were no epic stories circulated about her amorous adventures, her dramatic revenges, or her interventions in mortal wars. While the gods were involved in scandals worthy of a soap opera, Zeus transforming himself into animals to seduce mortals, Hera plotting cruel revenge, Ares plunging into bloody battles. Hestia remained silent, still, constant, invisible. She dressed simply without flashy adornments. She carried no obvious symbols of power like scepters or weapons. She was often portrayed simply as an ordinary woman with a veil over her head, making a discreet offering. This deliberate humility would, paradoxically, be her downfall. The arrival of Dionysus, the god who stole a throne. Dionysus was everything Hestia was not, son of Zeus and a mortal princess. He was the god of wine, divine madness, ritual ecstasy, and feasts that lasted all day. Where Hestia represented domestic order and quiet stability, Dionysus embodied creative chaos, the liberation of the senses, and the transgression of social norms. And he had something Hestia never had: public spectacle. The festivals of Dionysus, the Dionysiacs, were massive events that energized entire cities. With processions, dramatic rituals, theatrical competitions, and public sacrifices. Thousands of people participated. Wine flowed freely. Masks were worn. Plays were performed in enormous amphitheaters. Dionysus represented a colossal economic industry, the production and trade of wine, which enriched merchants and port cities. He was the patron of Greek theater, one of the most important arts of Hellenic culture. His festivals attracted visitors from all over Greece. Hestia, on the other hand, was worshipped in silence, at home, alone. Her worship didn't involve grand temples, didn't generate commerce or attract tourists. It was intimate, private, almost invisible to outsiders. Stories vary about what exactly happened. Some myths say Hestia voluntarily gave up her place on Olympus, choosing instead to descend and dwell among mortals, where she knew she would always be welcome in any home. But was this truly a free choice? Or was she a silent goddess gradually forgotten by a culture that was beginning to value spectacle over substance? The moment a goddess was forgotten, Hestia's sacred fire, kept in temples for centuries, was finally extinguished in 391 AD by order of Emperor Theodosius, following the banning of the Roman religion and the establishment of Christianity in the empire. Imagine this final scene in Rome at the Temple of Vesta, the Roman name for Hestia. Virgin priestesses who had dedicated 30 years of their lives to keeping the eternal flame burning are ordered to extinguish it. They had lived since childhood under sacred vows. They awoke before dawn to feed the fire. They spent the day in precise rituals. They knew that if the flame went out through negligence, they would be punished by death, buried alive. And now, for the first time in over 1,000 years of uninterrupted history, they were forced to let the fire die. It wasn't just the end of a flame. It was the deliberate erasure of a goddess from collective memory. Hestia was never completely forgotten. It would be impossible. Every time a family gathered around the table for dinner, every time travelers found hospitality in a strange home, every time a city founded a new colony, Hestia was there, invisible but present. But while Zeus, Hera, Athena, Poseidon, and even Dionysus remain famous to this day, starring in Hollywood films, appearing in video games, inspiring bestsellers, Hestia has become a footnote, a mythological curiosity, the 13th god few know. Perhaps this is exactly what she always wanted. Not colossal statues or marble temples, not Homeric epics singing her praises, just the smoke that rose silently from every Greek home, the heat that warmed children in winter, the light that guided strangers to the door of a hospitable house. She was removed from the 12 of Olympus, but her essence remains in something no other god has ever claimed: the heart of every home, the peace of every family, the place where there will always be a space reserved for those who arrive. And you? Did you know the story of Hestia? Which part of this narrative did you find most impactful? The fact that she was replaced by Dionysus, or that her sacred fire burned uninterruptedly for over 1,000 years? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story surprised you, just imagine how many other gods and secrets of antiquity are still waiting to be rediscovered. Which god or ancient story would you like to see in the next video?